and a free, independent state of Palestine is established. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Algeria for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are grateful to the Deputy Special Coordinator of the United Nations for the Middle East Peace Process, Rami Zalakbarov, for the detailed briefing on the situation on the occupied Palestinian territory in the context of the implementation of Security Council Resolution 2334. It is with deep regret that we are compelled, following the briefer, to observe the fact that the long-anticipated ceasefire in Gaza did not usher in alleviation of the plight of the residents of the West Bank, where, in addition to frequent military raids, the Israelis have launched a military operation in Tubas and Jenin. Since late September in the West Bank of Jordan River, including East Jerusalem, Israeli security forces and armed settlers have killed more than 40 Palestinians. More than 800 were wounded. And in October, the settlers carried out more than 260 attacks, which broke the record since 2006. These attacks became a part of a systematic campaign not just to intimidate local residents, but also to strip them of means of existence. These settler raids targeting olive harvests, together with the drought and unlimited access of farmers and agricultural workers to their lands, have already resulted in the lowest harvests since 2025, and this is the main source of revenue for the residents of the West Bank. The plans for the construction of new Israeli settlements on the West Bank are moving apace at a record tempo. In 2024, there were 26,170 housing units approved for erection, and in 2025, that number nearly doubled, reaching 47,390 units. In parallel, an illusion is being established of a legal justification for this illegal expansion. On the 12th of December, the Israeli Ministerial Cabinet decided to legalize the 19 settlements on the West Bank to give them a legal status. The Israeli leadership also clings to the idea of the de facto annexation of the West Bank of the Jordan River. In the Knesset, a bill is under consideration to repeal the prohibition on Jews gaining access to land in this part of the OPT. Against this backdrop, there's an ongoing practice of demolition of Palestinian units under the pretext of an absence of Israeli authorities granting permission, which is virtually impossible to secure. Since late September, 152 Palestinian housing units were demolished, and 24 of them, incidentally, had to be destroyed by the Palestinians themselves in order to avoid very high fines. This grotesque state of affairs reflects the true approach to the Palestinian people on the part of, according to what the U.S. colleagues assert, is the only democracy in the Middle East. I also wish to draw attention to the reprehensible raid of Israel targeting the UNRWA facilities in East Jerusalem on the 8th of October. Such acts fly in the face of the United Nations Convention on Privileges and Immunities. We also wish to recall the advisory opinion of the ICJ dating 22 October 2025. Relating to Israel's obligation regarding the presence and activities of the United Nations, other international organizations, and third states on the OPT. A General Assembly resolution was adopted on 12 December in support of that. We support the ongoing interrupted work of the UNRWA, which is the only source to which there's no alternative for comprehensive assistance to the Palestinians, both on the OPT and neighboring Arab lands. The large-scale, deliberate destruction of UNRWA facilities and the death of its staff must not remain unpunished. Mr. President, speaking of Gaza, there's a need to recognize that as part of the implementation of Donald Trump's plan, it has been possible to stem the large-scale bloodletting and hunger in the Strip. However, a lasting ceasefire has not been achieved. Since the 10th of October, Israel rained approximately 800 strikes down on Gaza, as a result of which at least 386 people died. The Israeli side continues to position significant obstacles to delivery of humanitarian assistance. The flow of cargo cleared for import only covers 35% of the needs, and entire categories of objects are arbitrarily being prohibited under the pretext of their being dual use in nature. Under these circumstances, the responsibility for the implementation of the provisions of the Comprehensive Peace Plan on Gaza lies with the United States and those states who publicly supported the adoption of Security Council Resolution 2803. We trust that the future transitional structures in the enclave will be formulated while taking into account the views of Ramallah, and the handover of authority to the PNA in the sector will take place in the foreseeable future. We believe that matters related to the future of Gaza need to be considered as being part and parcel of the main part of the OPT. A key role in Donald Trump's plan is set out for the ISF. 1 month after the adoption of Security Council Resolution 2803, it remains unclear which states are willing to join this mission. And we do not think this is not a coincidence. It is one matter to deploy specialists for a peacekeeping operation who will deal with ceasefire monitoring, deconfliction, and facilitating the restoration of the Palestinian security forces. It is another matter to have units whose goal is to attempt through force to compel the Palestinian fighters to relinquish weapons. This objective is liable to transform the ISF into a party to the conflict, with all of the attendant consequences, which multiply security risks for the foreign contingents deployed there. One cannot expect the ISF to achieve the impossible. We urge mediators to focus on seeking launch comprehensive negotiations to resolve the issue of disarmament of Palestinian groups and withdrawal of Israeli units from Gaza. The whole world has witnessed the horrors of a military attempts at military solution over the past 2 years. The time is ripe for real diplomacy on the ground, real diplomacy which has nothing to do with loud proclamations, real diplomacy which requires compromise and calm. Russia had and continues to embrace a principled position on Palestinian-Israeli settlement. Over the course of the wave of the recent outbreak of conflict and escalation, we called for immediate, unconditional, comprehensive ceasefire with the delivery of safe and unimpeded humanitarian assistance in accordance with the well-known guiding principles. We call for the launch of the peace process on a universally recognized international legal basis, including a two-state solution which will usher in the creation of an independent, viable state of Palestine within the 1967 borders, with the capital in East Jerusalem, coexisting in peace and security with Israel. At the same time, we consistently advocate uncompromising efforts to combat terrorism and extremism in all of their forms and their manifestations. For this reason, we vehemently condemned the barbaric extremist attack targeting Sydney during the commemorations of the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah on the 14th of December, as a result of which innocent civilians, including a Russian compatriot, died. We extend our deepest condolences to the families of the dead, and we wish a speedy recovery to those who have been injured. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, President. I wish to begin by expressing our condolences to the victims of the mass shooting that struck Sydney, Australia, and expressing our solidarity with the bereft families and those injured. I thank Deputy Special Coordinator Mr. Alakbarov for his briefing. When the Middle East is in turmoil, the world cannot be at peace. The Palestinian question remains at the very heart of the challenges in the Middle East. The latest outbreak of the Gaza conflict has brought unimaginable suffering to both Palestinian and Israeli civilians and triggered severe spillover effects across the Middle East. While the first phase ceasefire agreement in Gaza has been reached, the prospect of peace remains distant. The historical injustices endured by the Palestinian people persist. The Palestinian question should never be relegated to the margins. The international community must further build consensus and take more proactive actions to advance a political solution. First, violent conflict must not resume. A comprehensive and lasting ceasefire in Gaza must be secured. Over the past 2 months, frequent violations of the ceasefire agreement in Gaza have resulted in the death of over 300 civilians. Reaching a ceasefire agreement must entail the complete cessation of all hostilities, not merely a downgrade from intense conflict to a low-intensity attacks. Any reckless violation of the agreement could jeopardize and ultimately collapse the tenuous ceasefire. China calls on all parties, Israel in particular, to immediately fulfill their commitments under the ceasefire agreement, refrain from actions that could escalate tensions, and work toward achieving a genuine, comprehensive, and lasting ceasefire. Relevant mediating parties should take concrete steps to ensure the implementation of the ceasefire agreement. Second, the suffering of civilians must not continue. Urgent action is needed to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Winter storms have brought torrential rains, inundating numerous temporary camps and placing hundreds of thousands of displaced people under severe threat. Israel's continued restrictions on access to essential supplies are impeding the efforts of UNRWA and other humanitarian agencies to deliver critical assistance. Last week, the UN General Assembly overwhelmingly adopted a resolution supporting the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice, which clearly affirms Israel's obligations as the occupying power to ensure humanitarian supplies to Gaza and to cooperate with UNRWA and other relevant agencies. China urges Israel to earnestly fulfill its obligations under international law, open all border crossings, lift access restrictions on humanitarian supplies, and support the work of the UN and other aid agencies. Third, the situation in the West Bank must not be overlooked. Unilateral actions in violation of international law must cease immediately. The occupying power continues to advance settlement policies, demolish Palestinian homes, condone settler violence resulting in massive civilian casualties and displacement. Settlement activities violate international law and Council Resolution 2334, shrinking Palestinian living space and eroding the foundations of the two-state solution. We call on Israel to immediately cease all settlement activities, curb settler violence, and refrain from undermining the governance foundations of the Palestinian Authority. This includes the prompt return of withheld tax revenues and the removal of restrictions imposed on the Palestinian economy. Fourth, justice and fairness must prevail. The two-state solution must be implemented without delay. Implementing the two-state solution, establishing an independent state of Palestine, is the only viable path to resolving the Palestinian question. Any arrangements concerning Gaza's future must be guided by the principle of Palestinians governing Palestine. Any attempt to alter Gaza's territorial or demographic composition must be firmly rejected. 1 month has passed since the Security Council adopted Resolution 2803. The relevant country should act with a sense of responsibility toward the Palestinian people, the Security Council, and the international community by providing timely updates to the Council and ensuring the Council's close and sustained attention and effective engagement. The international community must redouble its efforts to advance the two-state solution, support the early establishment of an independent state of Palestine, and facilitate its full membership in the UN. President, China firmly supports the just cause of the Palestinian people in restoring their legitimate national rights. Recently, President Xi Jinping has on multiple occasions comprehensively articulated China's position and proposals for resolving the Palestinian question and announced that China will provide $100 million in assistance to Palestine to help alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and support its recovery and reconstruction. China will continue to work with the international community to promote a comprehensive and lasting ceasefire in Gaza, alleviate the humanitarian crisis, and make unremitting efforts towards a comprehensive, just, and lasting solution to the Palestinian question at an early date. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Deputy Special Coordinator Al-Akbarov. Before I begin, I want to pause to remember those killed and injured on Bondi Beach this weekend, celebrating Hanukkah. This attack must be called for what it is: anti-Semitic terrorism. President Trump and the U.S. government will continue to combat anti-Semitism wherever it occurs, including here at the United Nations. Last week, Ambassador Waltz traveled to Jordan and Israel, where he had the honor of spending time with the mother and father of Police Sergeant Ran Gavili, the last remaining hostage in Gaza. There, Ambassador Waltz learned of Ran's heroism. While off from work on medical leave, he saved dozens of lives before he was ultimately injured in a firefight and dragged to Gaza on the back of a motorbike. The world knows that Hamas and its affiliates knew the location of every hostage, and President Trump was clear. As part of the comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict, every hostage must come home. Rand's body must be returned to his parents and siblings now. We cannot move forward until he is home. Ambassador Waltz also had the opportunity to visit a warehouse run by the Jordan Hashemite Charity Organization, where aid procured with American taxpayer money sits in warehouses. Some of it is at risk of expiring. However, due to U.S. advocacy, humanitarian aid is transiting the Allenby crossing again, with World Food Program trucks passing through on December 10th. We will continue to work with our partners in Jordan and Israel to fully reopen the Jordan corridor for the more effective government-to-government route. This corridor is the most efficient and accountable route for providing much-needed aid to Gaza. The United States supports the need for clear security arrangements after a terrorist killed 2 Israelis on September 18th at the Allenby crossing. All parties must work to address these security issues so that the corridor can return to its prior level of operation. This council should also acknowledge that humanitarian aid has surged since the ceasefire began. The efforts of the United States and our partners are improving the humanitarian situation on the ground. Over 30,000 commercial and humanitarian trucks have entered Gaza, bringing food, shelter, and medicine, all thanks to the efforts of President Trump and the Civil Military Coordination Center, known as the CMCC. We continue to work with the UN and others so that supplies can reach those in need without diversion to terrorists or looters. With the USG and other donor support, the World Food Program is providing approximately 2 million hot meals daily within Gaza, and it is operating more than 200 bakeries. A successful vaccination campaign inoculated tens of thousands of children, protecting them from daily disease. Since October, the U.S. government obligated an additional $330 million to WFP and other NGOs to continue emergency food and shelter assistance. It also provides for field hospital support and to address water and sanitation needs. All of these improvements are the result of the hard work of the United States and our partners at the CMCC. We call on all in the Council today to contribute to our efforts with the CMCC and the International Stabilization Force. As Secretary Rubio stated, UNRWA is a subsidiary of Hamas. UNRWA operates under the absurd framework that treats Hamas like any other actor, and it rejects any reasonable standards for accountability or the vetting of its staff or partners. Colleagues, we have been clear. The United States opposes these quarterly briefings on UNSCR 2334, as they only distract from pressing threats to international peace and security. Resolution 2803, not 2334, charts the path towards a stable, safe, and prosperous Middle East. We are working with partners to stand up the International Stabilization Force and train fully vetted Palestinian police, not rehashing decades of failed policies. This council should recognize and end its outsized focus on an outdated resolution. The United States remains focused on keeping Israel secure and the Gaza and West Bank stable. President Trump has been perfectly clear that the United States expects the violence in the West Bank to end and that the United States will not allow the annexation of the West Bank. Perfunctory meetings like this one today are a distraction. The United States and its partners in the region will continue to focus on improving the situation on the ground, day in and day out. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. And let me also thank Deputy Special Coordinator Alec Barra for his briefing. I would like from the outset to express Denmark's